Chapter 23. Maybe we should stop coming to nights, Nate said. Shark groaned. He raised his beer bottle to his mouth and drained it. Why should we have to give up our secret life, he said, shaking his head. We didn't do anything wrong. There's a murderer out there, Nate said, looking pale and frightened in the dim light of the bar. He's murdering our friends one by one, Shark. Maybe it's not safe for us to be sitting here in the middle of the night. Maybe we're sitting ducks. Quack, quack, Shark said without smiling. He signaled Ryland to bring him another Budweiser. It was a week later, a week after the horrible fire and murders at the pep rally. The principal had pulled the basketball team out of the tournament. The high school was closed for 3 days. Counselors were available for any kids who wanted to talk to them. The police questioned us all, everyone who had been at Miller's farm that night. No one had seen anyone suspicious lurking around the field or barn. No one had seen anything that might help the police find the murderer. Of course, Dana and I knew the murderer couldn't be found. The murderer was a 100-year-old ghost, or maybe 200-year-old ghosts. Dana and I knew why Aaron and Galen died. We were the only ones who knew. And what we knew was driving us crazy. No way we could explain it to the police, or our parents, or even our friends. We hardly believed it ourselves. In the days after the bonfire, I moved between dark clouds of shock and anger. Sometimes my world was a total blur. I couldn't think straight. I couldn't see straight. Mom saw the trouble I was in. She wanted to take me to Dr. Feynman, our family doctor. I argued her out of it. I knew he'd be useless. Dr. Feynman, my friends are all being killed by Simon and Angelica Fear. I know they've been dead for a century, but they came back to murder all of us who broke into their house last year. Yeah, for sure. Jamie has gone Looney Tunes. When I wasn't lost in a haze, I felt only anger, the strongest, bitterest anger I'd ever felt in my life. How could this happen to me and my friends? It was so unfair, so tragic and unfair. And who would be next? Would it be me? Dana's way of dealing with it? She shoved it all aside. I don't know how she did it, but most of the time she swept it back to the back of her mind. Was it because she'd had so many other bad things happen in her life? I couldn't explain it. I guess I admired her for being able to go on as if things were almost normal. I couldn't do it. So we all gathered at nights to talk, all the night people. Trying to talk our way through the horror, trying to explain it away somehow. Everyone wants to wake up from a nightmare, but what if the nightmare refuses to go away? We'd pulled our chairs together at the back of the bar. No separate tables anymore. We knew we were all in this together. Shark and Nate, grim-faced, baseball caps pulled down over their foreheads, sat together in one corner. I kept thinking there should be a chair for Nikki, but of course she would not be arriving. Clark had his arm around Dana. He kept leaning against her and whispering in her ear. Dana kept glancing over to me. For some reason, Lewis seemed very distant tonight. He sat away from me, across from Shark and Nate, and he didn't say much. He sipped a Diet Coke and kept staring at the neon Budweiser sign at the front of the bar, as if hypnotized. I heard a rumor that Kristen Blake's parents are suing the school, Clark said, for negligence because of her burns. Lots of rumors going around, Lewis muttered, without looking at anyone. Don't you think Aaron's parents will sue? Shark said, and Galen's. Sue who? Nate said. Sue the murderer? Coach Murphy may get canned, Clark said. That's totally unfair. Nobody holds him responsible, do they? Dana asked. She glanced at me. She knew who was really responsible. It was so hard not to stand up and just blurt out the truth, but I knew I couldn't. I didn't want them to think I was crazy. I didn't want them to know I'd been inhabited by Angelica Fear. No way. I didn't want them to know I'd gone back into the Fear mansion. I'd seen Simon Fear. Hello? Who would believe a story like that? Was I being a coward by not revealing the truth, or was I being brave, keeping it to myself? We're all that's left, Shark muttered, motioning with his head. Just the 6 of us. He spun his beer bottle between his hands. The last of the night, people, Nate said. Eyes lowered to the floor, he sighed. This used to be so much fun, all of us sneaking out at night, having the whole town just to ourselves. Clark and I weren't here when you guys started doing this, Dana said. Janie Mead told me you started out meeting inside the Fear Mansion before it was torn down. Hello? Was that why Dana was handling all of this better than I was? Because she knew she and Clark weren't there the night we looted the Fear Mansion? Did she feel safe? Did she think Angelica's revenge had nothing to do with her? Anyway, I hoped she was right. I didn't want any harm to come to my cousin. I didn't want any harm to come to any of us. Suddenly, as they chattered on, I knew what I had to do. I jumped to my feet. I turned and hurried to the front door. Jamie, I heard Louis call. What are you doing? Dana shouted. Home, I said. I pushed open the door and stepped out into a cold, clear night. Yes, clear. Suddenly it all became clear to me. I couldn't sit around drinking beer and talking about how sad I was and let Simon or Angelica or whoever kill us one by one. I had to do something. This all started at the Fear Mansion, and I knew it had to end at the Fear Mansion. Chapter 24. I'm the only one who could stop the killings, I told myself. 4 o'clock in the morning, solid blackness outside my window. The only light in my room, the tiny bulb in my desk lamp against the wall. I was still dressed. I pulled off my shoes so my parents wouldn't hear me walking around. When I passed his room, I heard my little brother Danny coughing in his sleep. He had a cold. No big deal. I wondered if the little guy knew about the murders in my class. The story was all over the news. It was the only thing people in Shadyside talk about. I wondered if Danny and his friends frightened one another by talking about it too. My cell had rung all the way home in the car from Knight's. I glanced at the screen. Lewis. He kept calling and calling, but I didn't pick up. I knew what I had to do, and it didn't involve Lewis. Now the phone started to ring again. I pressed it off before it woke up Danny or my parents. Lewis certainly was being persistent. I guess he was just worried about me. Well, I was worried about me, too. I pulled the bracelet from my dresser drawer. The blue jewels gleamed dully in the dim light. I gazed at the bracelet as I slid it onto my wrist. It felt smooth and cool against my skin. Was it really Angelica Fear's? Did it have powers? It had the same design as Angelica's amulet. Did it also have the same magic? I hoped so. My plan was to use the magic to confront Angelica or Simon or both of them, to face them, to defeat them, to stop the killing and save my friends' lives. Crazy? What choice did I have? I carried the old spellbook to my desk and, squinting in the dim light, quickly found the spell I'd been practicing, a return spell. Squeezing the jeweled bracelet in my hand, twisting it on my wrist, I mouthed the word of the spell once again. I knew I needed to return to the Fear Mansion. It was the only way to confront the murderers. The only place I knew I could find Angelica and Simon. I shut my eyes tight and concentrated. I pictured the old mansion on top of its sloping, weed-choked hill. I pictured the brick turrets rising up on both sides like evil guardians. Return. Keeping my eyes shut tight, my muscles taut with concentration, I pictured Fear Street the way it used to be before the construction. I pictured the gnarled, tangled old trees that covered both sides of the street, casting the whole neighborhood in darkness. In my mind, I saw the Fear Street was bramble bushes, all prickly, thorn shrubs, moss-stained trees tilting in every direction. And I pictured, once again, the old houses, the brick mansions built like forts. And the most evil mansion of them all, the house of legends, of so much terror. Return. I had to go back there. I had to return to that house that no longer existed, to find that couple who shouldn't exist, the Fears who should have remained dead. Return. Spinning the bracelet in my hand, I kept my eyes shut and mouthed the ancient words, and I felt the cool silver grow warm. Yes, as I said the words, a tingling heat radiated from the bracelet, and the jewels glowed hotter. Return. Yes, return. Could I make the Fear Mansion return? I slid on my shoes, grabbed my down jacket, and tiptoed downstairs. Danny was snoring softly in his room. I stopped in the front entryway and swooped up the car keys. No, if I started the car, it would wake Mom and Dad. I set the keys down and silently crept out the door into the silence, the darkness, the coldness. Return. Chapter 25. I walked the 4 blocks to Fear Street. A light rain had started to fall, a dewy mist, and it made the shrubs and lawns glisten, as if I'm walking through some sort of child's fairyland, I thought, not heading to a house of evil. I shuddered and pulled up the hood on my jacket. As I crossed Powell, a family of raccoons darted out from under a hedge. Startled, I jumped back. There were 4 or 5 of them, all different sizes, and they shuffled across the street a few feet in front of me. I watched them disappear around the side of the house. They're night people too, I thought. All kinds of strange thoughts kept running through my head. I tried to force them away, to concentrate on my spells, on my mission. I turned onto Fear Street and heard the flapping of wings, soft at first, then louder as the big bird swooped low over my head, the one-eyed blackbird. I ducked away from it, buried my head in the parka hood. The bird floated over me, staring at me with its one bulging black eye. Please go away! I tried to shout, but my plea came out in a choked whisper. The frightening bird circled over me once, twice, flying low. Was it going to attack? No. It turned in the air and swooped away, flapping its dark wings as it rose. It disappeared over the trees, flying over Fear Street. I shivered. The cold mist covered my hot face. I brushed water from my eyes. I suddenly thought of the burning owls, their wings outlined in bright yellow flames. screeching, screeching, and once again I pictured the evil blackbird, its one eye staring so cold and cruel. I squeezed the bracelet. I felt it felt warm in my hand. I took a deep breath and ran the rest of the way to Fear Street. Return, and yes, there it stood on its dark hill. The Fear Mansion had returned. No lights from the shopping center, no familiar bar where we all met every night. The old mansion loomed over me, sinister and menacing, and I knew I had no choice. I had to go inside and face the evil that awaited me there. Rainwater ran down my face. My shoes sank into the marshy grass and mud as I made my way up the hill. An even deeper darkness washed over me as I stepped into the shadow of the house. The front doors creaked open, and again I felt the hard pressure at my back, the invisible force pushing me forward, pushing me into the house. Did someone whisper my name, or was that the wind through the trees? I stopped in front of in the front entryway. I shook water off my coat and lowered the hood. I waited for my eyes to adjust to the dim light. Pale yellow light seeped from a room down the front hall. Is anyone here? My shrill voice echoed against the bare walls. Without realizing it, I was gripping the bracelet tightly. I let go of it, felt its warmth disappear, and started walking toward the light. Who is here? I cried. Is anyone here? The house creaked and groaned, my only reply. I swallowed hard. My throat felt dry as sand. I tried to ignore the hard pounding of my heart. Is anyone here? The yellow light seeped over my shoes as I stopped outside the room. My legs started to tremble. Why was there a light on inside this house? Someone had to be in that room. I heard a rustling sound inside it, a soft scraping. Gathering my courage, I gripped the door frame, stuck my head out slowly, and peeked into the room. Bare walls, no furniture, the light filtered down from the ceiling. Squinting hard, I saw a shadow move. No, not a shadow. The black bird. Standing on a slender wooden perch, it raised its wings and ducked its head as if greeting me. How did it get in here? Why was it here? It kept its eye on me, staring back at me coldly, tilting its head from side to side. I cringed, seeing the empty eye socket, the black hole in the side of the bird's head. And then, without warning, it took off, pushed itself from its perch, and darted toward me, raising its talons and screeching its attack call. No! I tried to dodge away, but the bird fastened its claws around my shoulders. Beating its wings in my face, it lowered its open beak, and I heard a shout. I saw an arm swing. A hand slapped the side of the bird, slapped it hard. Stunned, the big bird fell back. Screeching in anger, it raised its wings, floated back onto its perch. Bobbing, it squinted at me with its one eye. I turned to see who had rescued me. A figure moved into the pale light, raised his face to me, and I let out a shocked scream. You! What are you doing here? Chapter 26. Louis wrapped his arms around me, a strange smile on his face. I followed you, he said. I came to help you. I guess I arrived just in time. My breath caught in my throat. I grabbed his hands. They were cold as ice. I'm so glad to see you, I said. That bird, it wanted to kill me, but how did you know? I was on my way to your house, he said. I saw you leave. I followed you here. I knew you'd need my help. On its perch, the bird flapped its wings and let out a shrill squawk. I grabbed Louis. That awful bird. Why? Jamie, follow me, Louis whispered. I hesitated. He took my hand and pulled me to the hall. Where? I cried. Where are you taking me? He guided me down the dark, narrow hall. The air grew colder as we walked. We have to end this, he said softly, holding on to me. Yes, I agreed. That's why I came, Louis, but where are we going? It's time to end it, he repeated, lowering his voice nearly to a growl. He turned a corner. Again, yellow light washed into the hallway from a room near the far end. Louis kept his eyes straight ahead. He gripped my wrist in his icy hand. His features were taut, tight with worry or fear. I didn't understand. My mind spun with questions. Where was he taking me? Why didn't I hear him following me here? Why wasn't he surprised that the Fear Mansion was back? He started walking faster, pushing me toward the yellow light. Louis, stop, I said. You're scaring me. Can't you explain what's going on? You'll see, he said, avoiding my eyes. Don't you trust me, Jamie? I just saved your life. Trust him? Of course. I trusted him more than anyone else on earth, but why was he acting so strangely? He brought his face close to mine. I could feel his hot breath on my cheek. He whispered, It's time. He guided me into a large room. Dark walls, bare wood floors, no furniture, the pale light washing down from the ceiling. I blinked. People came rushing toward me. Too fast. It was all happening too fast. I saw Dana, Shark, and Nate. They looked eerily pale in the yellow light. Sick. Their faces tight with fear, eyes wide, all talking at once. What are you doing here? I shouted. How did you get here? The blackbird fluttered over my head. It swooped into the room and perched on a windowsill. Dana grabbed my hand. I don't like this, Jamie, she said, her voice cracking. What is happening? Do you know? How do we get out of here? Shark demanded. Yeah, we want out of here, Nate agreed. Jamie, what's going on? Can we leave now? I felt Lewis step up behind me. He bumped me and grabbed my elbow. Jamie will help you out, he told them. No problem. Jamie will show you the way out. Huh? Lewis, what are you talking about? I cried. Enough already. Stop being so mysterious and... My breath caught in my throat when I saw his eyes. Pale eyes, silvery and cold, not Lewis's eyes. I knew Lewis's eyes. I gasped as I figured it out. I saw him flash, and I knew. Staring into those wrong eyes, I knew the truth. You're not Lewis? I choked out. He snickered, his face filled with amusement. It took you so long, Jamie. The others shrank back, staring in silence. Had they figured it out too? Lewis gripped my arm, holding me in place. No, I'm not your friend, Lewis, he said. I think you've guessed. I'm Simon Fear. I trusted you, I choked out. I confided in you, and all the time. My fear tightened my throat, choked off my words. All these weeks, I'd been searching for Angelica Fear, afraid that Angelica was nearby, afraid that she would possess me again, but Angelica was gone, destroyed, back in her grave somewhere, and all the while, Simon Fear had been the one who had murdered my friends, the one I should have been afraid of. Lewis, so close to me, the evil had been so close. Simon motioned to Dana, Shark, and Nate. Welcome to my home, or should I say, welcome back. His face changed quickly, like those stop-motion science movies. He aged in seconds. He flashed me a tight-lipped smile, a cruel, cold smile. I escaped my grave the same night my wife Angelica escaped hers, he said. Jamie, you and your friend Lewis had the honor of awakening us. You fell on our graves. You made it so easy for us. You gave us new bodies. My friends gasped. I tried to step away from Simon Fear, but he kept his grip on my arm. Let us out of here, Shark